I stood at the bustling gates of Clearwater Regional Airport, two worn suitcases at my feet, waiting for my son with our tickets for the long-awaited family getaway. That's when my phone rang. "Dad, we're already on the plane. You're not coming." The voice of my son, Damon, came through the receiver like a slab of ice against the skin. I heard a muffled laugh in the background, his wife, Callie, unmistakably pleased. "We'll finally have a vacation without the old man," she murmured, half laughing. My hands began to tremble. A hot wave of disbelief surged through me, but beneath it, something colder, deeper, began to settle. They would regret this. The airport terminal buzzed around me like a restless swarm. My old brown suitcase, its leather handle smooth from decades of travel, sat heavy beside my feet. The air carried the bitter scent of burnt espresso from a nearby stand. A distorted voice crackled over the intercom, announcing a delayed flight to Iron Bay. I checked my watch. 8:42 a.m. Damon should have arrived by now, tickets in hand, ready for our week-long trip to Marlow Island. I tapped the side of my phone, its screen black and stubborn. The ache in my knees flared up again, a constant reminder of my 69 years. I shifted my weight and scanned the crowd. A woman tugged a sobbing toddler along. A suited man argued with someone on his headset. A group of teens cackled at something on a screen. None of them were Damon. Maybe he was just late. Or maybe Callie had delayed him, the way she often did, fussing with her hair or some accessory. Then the phone vibrated sharply in my hand. Damon's name glowed on the screen. Relief rushed in like breath to drowning lungs. I answered immediately. "Hey, son. Where are you?" "I'm by the check-in counters." A pause. "Too long." "Dad," Damon said flatly, "we're already on board." "You're not coming." The word struck like a steel door slamming shut. "What?" My voice cracked before I could stop it. "What do you mean I'm not coming?" I gripped the suitcase so tightly the handle creaked. There was another pause. Then Callie's voice, soft and slicing, drifted into the line. "Finally, a vacation without this old man." Followed by that same stifled giggle, sharper now. My fingers trembled. I nearly dropped the phone. "Look," Damon added quickly, "it's better this way. You slow things down. We'll talk when we're back." And the line went dead. I stood frozen in place, the phone still pressed against my ear, its screen lifeless and cold. The terminal swelled with sound again, footsteps, murmured announcements, the hum of motion, but it all felt far away, like hearing through thick glass. My chest burned with a slow, rising fire. They'd gone. They'd taken the trip I had spent months organizing, the trip I'd paid for down to the last meal and hotel room. And they left me behind as if I were no more than an afterthought. Callie's words circled in my mind. Without this old man. I forced myself to move, dragging the suitcase behind me. The wheels squeaked, pitiful against the polished floor. People flowed around me, blurs of color and sound. I passed the coffee kiosk again. The smell now turned sour in my nose. Outside, the air was crisp. Late March wind bit at my jacket. A line of mustard-colored taxis idled along the curb, their drivers gathered in quiet conversation. I raised a hand and one pulled forward. The driver, a wiry man with a peppered beard, stepped out and lifted my suitcase into the trunk. "Rough day?" he asked, glancing at me. I didn't answer. I slid into the back seat. The door shut with a dull finality, locking me in with the scent of old pine air freshener. My hands clenched, knuckles pale. Callie's laugh echoed in my head, each note fanning the flame. They thought they could humiliate me, push me aside like a used coat. They were wrong. The driver climbed into the front seat and looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Hey, friend. You okay?" "Where to?" I kept my eyes on the window. The airport receded in the distance, blurred and shrinking. In the reflection, I barely recognized myself, gray hair, lined features, and a gaze harder than I'd ever seen looking back. "They'll regret this," I whispered. The driver cleared his throat. "I kind of need a destination." I reached into my pocket, the keys pressing into my leg like a reminder. "Take me home," I said quietly. "Just take me home." The taxi merged onto the freeway. Raindrops streaked the windows, tracing thin lines like tears. The skyline of Clearwater blurred beyond the glass, a cold silhouette against the overcast morning. I sat stiff in the back seat, house keys in my coat pocket, hands folded like they were holding something back. From the front, a soft jazz tune played faintly on the radio, blending with the whisper of tires on wet asphalt. The cab smelled faintly of old leather and the lingering trace of cigarettes clinging to the upholstery. I kept my eyes on the water tracking down the glass, replaying River's voice in my mind. "You're not coming. You sure you're okay back there?" The driver asked gently, his voice cutting through the quiet like a warm breeze. I glanced at the rearview mirror and caught his eyes kind, creased with age, framed by thick silver hair. His faded jacket bore a name tag, read Frank. "Fine," I muttered. My voice came out rougher than I intended. I didn't want conversation. Not with him. Not with anyone. But Frank wasn't the type to let silence sit for long. "Long day, huh? Airports are wild this time of year." He chuckled softly, adjusting his hands on the wheel. "Dropping folks off, picking others up. Makes me miss my kids. They're all over the place now. Got family waiting for you back home." The word family hit like a slap, sharp, unexpected. I thought of River's distant tone. Kala's scornful laugh. My fingers tightened around the house keys in my coat pocket, their jagged edges pressing into my skin. "Something like that," I said, keeping my gaze on the rain-slicked streets. Frank didn't say more, but the question lingered, stirring memories I tried to leave buried. River at 19, eyes shining as I handed him the keys to the car I'd bought with months of overtime. His promise to make me proud still echoed in my ears. Or the afternoon I stood beside him at his wedding, footing the bill for the whole thing, including Kala's dress, which cost more than my monthly retirement check. Her smile had been tight, her thanks barely a whisper, as she commented under her breath that the church was a bit too vintage. "Like my home, apparently." She'd said as much last month, sipping from my coffee mug while complaining about the dated decor. The leather beneath me creaked as I shifted. Outside, the rain grew heavier, rattling on the roof. I thought of everything I had done for them. Tuition, repairs, the honeymoon down payment, all the little things no one remembers until you stop doing them. And now, they left me at an airport, laughing, free at last of the so-called burden they never said aloud but always implied. "You ever feel like you gave too much?" I asked, my voice low and unfiltered, barely above the hum of the engine. Frank raised his eyebrows in the mirror, sympathy creasing his brow. "To family?" He let out a short, knowing breath. "All the time. Gave my daughter my old van when she moved to Fairhollow. She sold it a month later. Didn't even tell me." He shook his head, but his tone stayed easy. "Still, you give because you care. Doesn't always come back the way you hope." I nodded slightly, my throat tightening. Love. I'd loved River fiercely, even as his calls dwindled, his visits growing shorter and further between. I convinced myself it was life, or maybe Kala's influence. Work, marriage, stress. But now the truth was sharper. Every gesture, every dollar had become a leash to keep me around when useful and easy to cut once I wasn't. The taxi slowed as we turned into my neighborhood. Small houses lined both sides of the street, yards trimmed neatly, mailboxes tilting from long-forgotten storms. It should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt hollow. I rested my head against the window, the glass cold against my temple. Kala's voice returned, without this old man. It echoed beneath my ribs. But this time it didn't sting. It lit something else. Something solid, like the keys in my palm. Frank eased the car to a stop in front of my house. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. There it stood, my two-story colonial, its white paint faded and peeling, the porch sagging like a tired spine. It wasn't much to some, but it was mine. Built with patience, held together with long nights and longer weeks. And they thought they could erase me from it. "Home sweet home," Frank said, glancing over his shoulder. "That'll be $28.60. I handed him a crumpled 30. "Keep the change," I said, my voice steadier now. I stepped into the rain, the cold instantly soaking through my coat. I pulled the suitcase from the trunk, its wheels clicking on the damp stones. Frank lingered a second. "Take care, all right?" Family stuff's never as bad as it feels in the moment. I didn't answer, just gave a slight nod. The cab rolled away, red taillights blinking through the rain until they disappeared. I turned back toward the house. My house, the one I'd sacrificed for. The one they now looked down on, dismissed like some embarrassing relic. The keys gleamed in my hand, wet but solid. My expression hardened. They'd see soon enough. I pushed the front door open. It creaked, long and slow, the sound echoing in the quiet like a drawn breath. I dropped my suitcase just past the entryway, the dull thud muffled by the worn rug. The air inside smelled of old coffee and the faint lavender of the cleaner I'd used the week before. 2 stories of creaking floors and chipped woodwork, each one earned with aching joints and quiet perseverance. Now it felt like a memorial to everything I'd given and lost. I walked to the kitchen, shoes leaving faint tracks on the scuffed hardwood. I didn't bother removing my coat. The chill stayed with me inside and out. I flipped on the coffee maker. Its gentle hum filled the silence. As the coffee maker sputtered and hissed, I sank into the old armchair by the window. The springs groaned beneath me, a tired sound I'd heard for years. Across the room, the shelf held an array of family photos. Jace, back when he still had that crooked smile, his front tooth missing, beaming beside me on a dusty pier. Our fishing trip when he was 16. His wedding day, where I stood beside him, proud despite Myra's thin, forced smile. I stared at the frames, my chest tightening. How had we ended up here? Jace's voice echoed in my mind, cold and absolute. You're not coming. Then Myra's laugh, sharp, dismissive. Without this old man. My hands twitched, the urge to knock the shelf over bubbling beneath my skin. Instead, I clenched the armrests. The wood felt smooth under my palms, familiar, grounding. I had given them everything: college tuition, cars, the roof over their heads. And in return, a phone call, a cruel laugh, a seat left empty on the plane I paid for. I stood and paced the kitchen, my steps dull against the floor. The coffee maker beeped, but I ignored it. My eyes were drawn to the keys I dropped on the counter. They caught the light, gleaming faintly. Small, but solid. A reminder. This house was mine. This life, mine. I wasn't the burden they decided I was. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. The number for Summit Federal Bank stared back at me like a challenge. My thumb hovered over the button. I hesitated. Not yet. I needed to be calm. Strategic. I wasn't Jace, acting on whim. I wasn't Mira, weaving manipulation behind polished smiles. Whatever I did next, it would be intentional. Precise. I moved into the living room, trailing my hand across the back of the couch where Jace used to sprawl, demanding funds for the newest gadget he had to have. Dad, you just don't get it, he'd say, eyes rolling when I'd mention saving. Mira was worse. Her passive jabs like tiny cuts that bled slow and deep. This house is so dated, she'd said once, sipping wine from a bottle I'd bought. You really ought to renovate. As if I hadn't poured every spare cent into these walls. I paused at the fireplace. Another photo caught my eye, Jace and me on his graduation day. I'd taken extra shifts just to pay that last tuition bill. He'd hugged me that afternoon and said he was proud to be my son. A lie I saw now. My throat burned. But no tears. Not anymore. Not for them. I thought of their laughter at the airport, how easily they'd cut me out of their lives. They believed I was soft, easy to ignore. A man who would keep giving no matter how deep the betrayal. They were wrong. That man, the one left behind at that terminal, shaking, humiliated, was gone. What remained was something else. Someone they'd underestimated for the last time. I walked to the front window. The curtains were rough beneath my fingers as I pushed them aside. The front yard stretched out before me. The lawn was patchy, rain-slicked. Beyond it, the neighborhood was quiet. The storm had dwindled to a drizzle. I spotted Marnie's porch light glowing from next door. She'd understand, I thought. Maybe she'd lost someone too, been burned by the people she loved. But this was my burden. In the window's reflection, I barely recognized myself, eyes sharp, unwavering. I thought of the accounts I'd opened for Jace, the mortgage I'd paid off solo. They lived here because I made it possible. They ate under my roof, slept beneath my ceiling, and still they cast me aside like a worn-out relic. No more. I reached for the keys again. Their weight grounded me. They were a promise, a symbol of everything I'd built. I wasn't letting them take any more. Enough, I whispered into the silence. I turned from the window, my eyes drifting once more to the front yard. You'll see. In the study, my old computer hummed to life, its screen casting a bluish glow over the cluttered desk. Shadows danced across scattered papers and open books. A half-full mug of cold coffee sat nearby, its bitterness lingering in the air, mingling with the scent of dust and age. Outside, the drizzle tapped softly against the glass. The house felt too quiet, not peaceful, oppressive. I sat down and stared at my phone. The bank's number was still on the screen. My thumb hovered over it again. The hesitation was back. Then I thought of Jace, sipping cocktails I'd unknowingly paid for. Mira, her words coiled like snakes. Finally, a vacation without this old man. The knot in my chest snapped. No more. I pressed the call button. The line clicked. Summit Federal, this is Kendra. How may I assist you today? I cleared my throat, my voice firm. This is Raymond Mercer. I need to make changes to my account. Immediately. Her tone remained calm, professional. Of course, Mr. Mercer. Can you verify your account details? I rattled off the numbers with precision. My eyes flicked to the keys beside the keyboard. They shimmered softly under the desk lamp, solid, untouchable. A reminder of everything that was mine. Kendra typed quietly. The sound of keystrokes filled the silence. All right, sir. What changes would you like to make? I didn't pause. I want to revoke access for my son, Jace Mercer, and his wife, Mira. They are listed as authorized users on my secondary card. I need that stopped now. My words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. The chair creaked as I leaned forward, my free hand tightening into a fist. There was a pause. I see, Kendra replied. Just to clarify, are you removing their access permanently or placing a temporary hold? Permanently, I said, my voice like steel. They are not to access my accounts again. Her tone softened, just slightly. Understood. I'll need to verify a few more details before I can complete the request. Can you provide the last 4 digits of the card? I gave her the numbers, each one deliberate. My pulse picked up. A small, stubborn voice in the back of my head whispered that maybe this was too far. That Jace was still my son. For years, I'd told myself his distance was just temporary, that Myra's coldness was simply her way. But the airport, that call, it shattered that illusion. I wasn't their ATM. I was their father. And they treated me like a ghost. Okay, Mr. Mercer, Kendra said after a few moments. Jace Mercer and Mira Mercer have been removed as authorized users. The change takes effect immediately. They no longer have access to the card. Would you like a confirmation email? Yes, I exhaled. Please. Thank you. You're welcome. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? No. That's all. I ended the call and sat back. The phone felt heavier than before, like it had absorbed the weight of everything I'd just done. The coffee on my desk had gone cold, a thin film forming over the top. It was done. The first move. Relief and dread churned together in my gut. What would they do when they realized? Yell? Plead? A small part of me wanted to hear it. I stood, knees aching, and walked to the window. The yard outside was damp and still. Across the street, Marnie's porch light glowed faintly in the mist. She was probably inside sipping chamomile, ready to corner me with talk about her tulips. But this wasn't her story. My eyes drifted back to the dusk. The keys were there, catching the dim light. I picked them up, the cold metal steadying me. This house, this life, it wasn't theirs to take. I clenched the keys in my palm until the edges bit into my skin. Let them learn what it feels like to lose. My phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of the moment. A message lit up the screen. Jace. My heart skipped. I didn't open it. Not yet. A smile crept across my face, small, sharp, unfamiliar. Let them wait. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and turned toward the window. The rain had stopped. The silence outside was dense, expectant. I sat again in my study, the phone still warm from the call. My mind drifted unbidden to Ocean View Bay, where I imagined they were now. I could picture it clearly. A table at a high-end coastal restaurant. Linen napkins. Glassware sparkling in the golden light. The air smelling of frangipani and salt. Jace and Mira relaxed, maybe laughing over overpriced appetizers, toasting to a trip they thought they'd won. Then it hits. The waiter approaches. Polished. Polite. Just a hint of discomfort in his tone. "I'm sorry, sir," he says, handing the card back across the table. "It's been declined." Jace's laugh falters. His brow furrows. "That can't be right. Try it again." He leans forward, as if sheer confidence can override a system flag. The waiter nods, vanishes, returns. Same result. Declined. Jace's expression sours. His fingers tap the table, restless. Mira leans in, her voice low and sharp. "What did you do?" she hisses. "Did you forget to tell him something?" "It's not me," Jace snaps, pulling out his phone, dialing the bank, stuck in the endless loop of automated prompts. Mira twists a cloth napkin in her lap, eyes narrowing. Then it clicks. "It's him," she says, her voice flat. "Your father." Back in my study, I leaned into the chair, letting it creak beneath me. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Jace. I didn't check it. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket. I already knew what the voicemails would say. I'd heard them. I played them now. The speaker crackled. "Dad, what the hell is this?" Jace's voice trembled, anger tinged with panic. "The card's not working. We're stuck. Fix it." The next message was colder. "Mira, so this is your idea of a joke, Raymond? Blocking the card? You're ruining everything. You're pathetic." I let their voices play out, each word more desperate than the last. They were unraveling. Pathetic? No. They were the ones stranded now. Not me. Their fantasy unraveling, their control gone, all because they never thought I'd push back. I pictured the hotel room, curtains drawn against an ocean they couldn't afford to admire. Jace pacing, phone in hand, redialing numbers he'd memorized. Mira perched at the edge of the bed, arms crossed, calculating. "You idiot," she'd mutter. "You said he'd never do this. You said he was too soft." "Don't start," Jace would snap, raking a hand through his hair. "I didn't think he'd go this far. He's never stood his ground before." "Well, he has now," Mira would fire back, her eyes glinting. "And we're screwed unless you figure it out." I could almost hear her gears turning. Mira had always been sharp. Too sharp. She'd be the one to shift, to find the next move, to weaponize it. "Call Mason," she'd say, her voice regaining composure. "He owes us. He can talk to your dad. Fix this." Jace would hesitate, wounded pride etched in his jaw. But he'd nod. "Fine. But this isn't over. He's going to regret this." The buzz of my phone dragged me back to the study. Another voicemail. I played it. Jace's voice was quiet, bitter. "You think you're clever, Dad. Cutting us off? You're going to wish you hadn't." "I mean it." I set the phone down, pulse steady. Let them bark. They held no power anymore. My eyes shifted to the stack of papers on the desk, documents clipped neatly, waiting to be signed. The house keys sat beside them, their dull metallic sheen a promise etched in steel. They could rage. They could threaten. But I was just getting started. I leaned back in the chair, the creak beneath me echoing in the hush. Outside, the drizzle had finally stopped. The world sat unnervingly still. The law office smelled like polished wood and old leather, a scent that clung to irreversible decisions. I sat across from Mr. Hanley, an aging attorney with skin like creased parchment and hands that never stopped moving, pen-scratching notes on yellow legal pads. The folder I'd brought lay open in front of him. The papers inside were crisp, final. Outside, the downtown heart of Fairwold hummed faintly, horns, footsteps, life continuing. But here it was quiet. The only sound was the clock on the wall, ticking without emotion. "So, Raymond," Hanley said, peering over his glasses. "You're absolutely certain? You want to remove your son from the will entirely?" I nodded. My hands stayed folded in my lap. "Completely." My voice didn't waver, though something twisted in my chest. A flicker of memory. Jace at 16, holding up a trout with a grin too big for his face. Then another voice, from just the day before. You're going to regret this. No, I thought. You'll regret what led us here. He made his decision, I added quietly. Hanley studied me for a moment. I have to ask, family matters are rarely clean. If you change your mind later, it's more paperwork. Are you sure this is the path you want? I hesitated briefly. I thought of Jace's birthday just last month. I'd left him a cheerful voicemail. His reply? A text. Busy dad. Talk later. He never called. Then Myra's voice, slick and superior. This house is so dated. They didn't deserve my name in ink. I'm sure, I said, locking eyes with him. Let's move forward. Hanley nodded and began writing. I'll draft the updated will. You'll need to sign it in front of a witness. Shouldn't take long. Any other changes? Beneficiaries, asset directives. I thought of the keys I'd left on the desk that morning. The house stays mine. No beneficiaries. Not yet. He jotted the note down. Understood. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. I rose, shaking his hand firmly, the folder tucked under my arm like a shield. It didn't feel heavy, it felt right. As I stepped into the hallway, a voice called out behind me. Raymond? That you? I turned to see Marnie Thompson, my neighbor, her white curls tucked into a scarf, eyes sharp with curiosity and warmth. She held a paper cup of coffee, steam curling from the lid. Didn't expect to see you here, she said, smiling. Handling something serious? Marnie, I replied with a nod. Just sorting out some paperwork. Her gaze dropped to the folder, then flicked back to my face. Sounds like something worth decompressing over. There's a little cafe across the street. My treat. I hesitated, but her presence, calm, grounded, was difficult to decline. Sure, I said, following her toward the elevator. Behind us, the lawyer's door clicked shut. Final. The cafe was cozy and warm, the scent of cinnamon and roasted beans thick in the air. We found a corner table. Cups clinked. Conversations murmured in the background. Marnie sipped her drink, watching me over the rim. You've got that look, she said, tone easy but inquisitive. Like a man who's made a decision. I tried to laugh, but it came out more like a sigh. It's complicated. Try me, she said, leaning in. I've got stories too. Ever tell you about my cousin? Tried to claim my house after my husband passed. Family can really blindside you. Her bluntness caught me off guard, but it grounded me. I took a sip of coffee. The bitterness was oddly comforting. Jace and Mira, I said quietly. They crossed a line. I'm making sure it doesn't happen again. Marnie didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed, not in judgment, but solidarity. Good, she said. People like that, take until you have nothing left. You've got to draw a line. Marnie paused, then added with a shrug, if you need a hand, I'm here. I'm no lawyer, but I'm nosy and I've got time. For the first time in days, I smiled. A real one. I'll keep that in mind. We talked for a while longer, her stories pulling me out of the storm in my head. But by the time I walked back home, folder still under my arm, that storm had returned. Marnie was a good neighbor, maybe even an ally, but this wasn't her fight. This was mine. I turned the corner onto Pinebriar Lane, the outline of my house rising in the distance, its sagging porch looking more like an accusation than a welcome. Then I froze. A sleek black sedan sat in my driveway. I didn't recognize it at first until I did. Mason's car. Jace's friend. The one who always had something to hide behind that polished smile. My pace slowed, my grip on the folder tightening. What was he doing here? The living room was dim, lit only by a table lamp that cast long shadows across the scuffed floorboards. The scent of lavender clung faintly to the throw blanket tossed across the couch. I sat in my armchair, an old photo album open on my lap. The pages had yellowed, corners curled from time. One picture caught my eye, Jace's 10th birthday. Frosting smudged across his cheeks, his grin wide and unguarded. The memory stung, but I pushed it aside. My fingers brushed the edge of the album, then stopped. A low rumble. Headlights swept past the window. Tires crunched over gravel. I stood. The album slid shut with a soft thud. Peering through the curtain, I saw it again. Mason's sedan, engine still running, lights off, like it was waiting to pounce. My heartbeat quickened, but I kept my breathing steady. So they sent him. Jace and Myra's messenger boy. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Insistent. I crossed the room, the rug muffling my steps, and opened the door. There he was, Mason. Tall, broad, dressed like he had something to prove. His leather jacket caught the porch light, gleaming. His smile was all flash, no warmth. "Evening, Raymond," he said, voice smooth as ever. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't move. My hand rested on the doorframe. "What do you want, Mason?" His grin faltered, just slightly, but he leaned in. "Just a quick word about Jace and Mira. Seems you've got them in a bit of a jam." He tilted his head, like we were old friends sharing a joke. I didn't return it. They put themselves there. "Say what you came to say." He gave a humorless chuckle, glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "Fine. Straight to it. The card issue, it's causing real problems. They're stuck in Oceanside. Can't cover the bill. You need to fix this." "My money." "My decision," I said flatly. "They're not entitled to a cent." Mason's fake charm evaporated. His jaw tightened. He stepped closer, voice lowering. "Come on, Raymond. You really want this to get messy? Jace is your son. He deserves better than this." Deserves. That word burned. "Mason," I said slowly, voice low, controlled. "Like you deserve that loan I gave you 10 years ago? The one you never paid back?" He shifted, just slightly. "Tell Jace he's on his own." Both of them are. Mason's eyes darkened. His hands flexed at his sides. "You're making a mistake, old man. Jace isn't going to forget this. You think you can just shut him out? He's got plans." I stepped forward, close enough to smell the heavy cologne he'd soaked himself in. "Tell him to go ahead," I said, voice like stone. "And get off my porch." For a beat, he didn't move. His stare locked with mine. Then he snorted and stepped back. "This isn't over," he said, pointing a finger at me before turning away. The car door slammed. A moment later, his tires squealed down the street, taillights vanishing into the dark. I shut the door with a solid click. The lock slid into place. My heart was pounding, but oddly, I felt calm. Steady. They thought they could rattle me, intimidate me. Wrong again. I crossed to the window and watched Mason's car disappear down Pinebriar. The neighborhood was still. Only the occasional chirp of insects broke the silence. My eyes found the keys on the coffee table, their metallic edges catching the lamplight. This is my home, my life, and I would defend it. I let the curtain fall. The glow of the keys stayed with me, like an oath whispered in steel. The night was thick with silence, tense, expectant. Something was coming. The next morning, I walked to the park. The air was crisp, the scent of damp grass and cherry blossoms riding the breeze. Pink petals floated down like confetti, catching at my coat folds. The path curved gently through the trees. No one else around. I slowed near an old bench, its wood faded and splintered. A memory hit me like a wave. Jace at 10, sprinting ahead with his fishing rod bouncing on his shoulder, laughing. Calling back to me. "Come on, Dad," he'd called out, his laughter bright as sunlight flickering off the pond. We'd spent hours there, tangled in fishing line, baiting hooks, his voice full of stories about school and dreams. My chest tightened. The ache started small, then spread slow and heavy. Had I gone too far? Cutting him off, erasing his name from the will. He was still my son. I sank onto the weathered bench. The chill seeped through my jeans. The park was nearly empty, a single jogger in the distance, leaves rustling gently above. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake the doubt clinging to me like fog. But Jace wasn't that boy anymore. He'd grown into the man who left me behind at an airport, who stood by while Mira mocked me with her smirk and her wine glass, while they drained my accounts like they were entitled to them. Still, that laugh from the past, it lingered like a wound that never fully closed. "Raymond, you look like you're carrying the world." Marnie's voice broke through my thoughts. She stood a few feet away, her gray curls tucked beneath a knit cap, her scruffy terrier Max sniffing at the damp grass. Her gaze was warm, but piercing, as if she could see right into me. I gave her a weak smile. Didn't expect to see you out here. Max doesn't give me a choice, she said, scratching behind the dog's ear. You've got that look. Want to talk about it? I hesitated. Then the words spilled out like breath I'd been holding too long. It's Jace. I keep seeing him as a kid. Makes me wonder if I've done the right thing. Marnie nodded and sat beside me. Max flopped at her feet, panting softly. Kids grow up, she said. Doesn't mean they become who we hoped they would. Her tone was gentle, but there was steel beneath it. What's got you second-guessing? I told her everything about Mason, the threats, the decision to change the will. The words were heavy, each one harder than the last. I cut him out, I said quietly. My own son. What if I'm wrong? She leaned back, both hands wrapped around her travel mug. You're not wrong for wanting respect. She looked at me, her voice firmer now. I had a nephew once. Sweet talker. Tried to charm me out of my house after my Tom passed. Even forged my signature. Her eyes narrowed. Family's no excuse for betrayal. She paused. You gave Jace everything. What's he given you lately? I thought of the airport. Myra's laugh. Jace's hollow voice. Nothing, I said. Not in years. Exactly. Marnie's tone sharpened. You're not the villain here. You're just done being used. Don't let guilt trick you into undoing what needs to be done. Her words landed like a steady hand on my shoulder. I nodded. The ache in my chest eased, if only a little. Thanks, I murmured. She stood and stretched. Come on. Max will destroy my boots if we don't move. We walked back to my place, Max trotting happily ahead. In the kitchen, I boiled water. The sharp whistle of the kettle pierced the quiet. Chamomile and lemon filled the air. Marnie settled at the table, her travel mug replaced with a real cup. So, she said lightly, what's next? I poured her tea, eyes drifting to the folder on the counter. The will signed, sealed, waiting. I keep going, I said, my voice calm and sure. They don't get to win. Marnie raised her mug, a sly glint in her eye. That's the spirit. You're tougher than you look, Raymond. I smiled, setting the kettle aside. The folder on the counter felt heavier now, not with doubt, but with conviction. I need to finish what I started, I said, locking eyes with her. She nodded once, her sip of tea saying more than words could. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Downstairs, the high-pitched whine of a drill echoed down the hall. The locksmith, Pete, a wiry guy with a belt full of clinking tools, was finishing the new deadbolt on the front door. The scent of fresh paint and metal filings filled the air. I stood a few feet back, arms crossed, watching him work. Each twist of the screwdriver felt like a stitch closing a wound. Jace and Mira wouldn't walk through this door again, not without permission. Almost done, Pete said, glancing up. You want the back door done too? Already taken care of, I replied. Just make this one solid. He nodded, wiping his brow. Big move, huh? Lockout situation. I gave him a tight smile. Something like that. The new keys sat in my pocket. Cold, sharp edges pressing against my thigh, a quiet reminder of the line I'd drawn. My house, my rules. I climbed the stairs. Each step creaked beneath me. The bedroom door was half open. Jace and Myra's old room, left in disarray. Clothes scattered on the bed. A half-empty coffee mug on the nightstand. No respect. No thought. I grabbed a stack of cardboard boxes and began packing. Myra's designer dresses, shiny symbols of indulgence, went in first, silk whispering against the cardboard. Then Jace's tech. His smartwatch, a birthday gift for me. The screen still bore his fingerprints. Every item I packed was a piece of my past, gifts, expenses, symbols of my generosity that had never been returned with gratitude. I worked methodically, folding, stacking, sealing. The task was oddly satisfying, like reclaiming parts of myself that had been slowly taken away. I paused at a framed photo on the dresser, Jace and Mira on some beach, both of them wearing smug, carefree smiles. I dropped it into a box without flinching. Let them keep their memories. They wouldn't keep my home. Pete's voice echoed from below. All set, Mr. Mercer. Want to test the keys? Be right down, I called, taping the last box shut. I carried it downstairs, the weight tugging at my arms, and added it to the neat stack I'd arranged in the front yard. The grass was damp. The late April air was crisp against my skin. The boxes stood like a quiet line in the sand, a silent eviction notice. I pulled a note card from my pocket, scribbled a message in bold, sharp strokes, "You don't live here anymore." I slid it beneath the top flap. Simple. Final. The front door creaked and Marnie stepped out, her scarf catching in the breeze. She had stopped by to check in, a steady presence amid the storm. "Well, damn, Raymond," she said, eyeing the row of boxes. "You don't waste time." I shrugged, dusting my hands. Had to be done. She scanned the yard, lips pursing. "They're going to lose it when they see this. You ready for that?" "They've had their chances," I said quietly. "I'm done waiting for them to change." Marnie's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Good. But keep your eyes open. People like that don't go quietly." Her warning settled in deep. She wasn't wrong. Jace and Mira wouldn't just fade away. But I was ready. Or so I thought. Pete appeared at the porch with his toolbox. "Locks are tight. Here's your keys." He handed me a small metal ring. The new keys glinted in the fading light. "Anything else?" "That's it," I said, sliding them into my pocket. "Thanks, Pete." He tipped his cap and walked to his van, the engine starting with a low rumble before he pulled away down the street. Marnie and I stood together in the quiet. The yard was still. The boxes loomed nearby, a quiet monument to the bridge I'd burned. "You did good," she said, her voice soft, unwavering. "This is yours now. All of it." I nodded, throat tight. The new keys in my pocket felt heavier now, half promise, half burden. I turned to the house. Its silhouette cut sharply against the dusky sky. And then I heard it. The distant hum of a plane overhead. My grip on the keys tightened. My heart rate ticked up. They were coming back. The living room was warm. The faint scent of fresh coffee curled from the mug beside me. The lamp cast a soft glow across the rug, its worn edges a quiet witness to decades of footsteps. Outside, the May evenings settled over the suburbs. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of rain on its way. I sat in my armchair, the new keys still in my pocket, their weight grounding me. Then a low rumble. Headlights swept across the curtains. Tires crunched on gravel. They were back. I stood and moved to the window, gently pulling the curtain aside. Jace and Mira climbed out of a taxi, their luggage thudding onto the driveway. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess. Mira clutched her designer bag like it was the last piece of solid ground. Her heels clicked sharply across the driveway. They looked smaller now. Under the streetlight's glow, they weren't bold, they were just tired. Jace approached the front door, fumbling with his key. His movements were stiff, irritated. The lock wouldn't budge. He tried again, twisting harder. His shoulders tensed. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice carrying. Mira stepped forward, her voice edged with impatience. "Try it again." "You're doing it wrong." "I'm not," he snapped, jamming the key again. Still nothing. He slapped his palm against the door, the thud echoing. "Dad, open the damn door." I didn't move. My pulse was steady. This was the moment. The locks. The boxes, the note, all of it leading here. They would finally feel the full weight of every choice they made, every careless word, every selfish act. Without this old man, let them see what that meant. Jace pounded again, louder. "Dad, I know you're in there. Stop this crap and let us in." Mira grabbed his arm, her nails digging in. "Scream louder, why don't you? The whole street's watching." "Then what do you suggest?" he snapped. "He's locked us out. Of our own house." "It's his house," she shot back. "You said he'd never do this. You said he was spineless." Jace's face twisted with frustration, but he said nothing. He kicked the door once. A dull, futile thud. Then Myra's gaze shifted, narrowing on the side yard. "What's that?" Her tone had changed, colder, sharper. They moved together toward the stack of boxes, their suitcases forgotten in the grass. I leaned in closer to the window, my fingertips brushing the curtain's edge. Jace reached the boxes first and yanked one open. Myra's dresses spilled out first, silk and satin catching the faint light from the porch. Jace froze, then pulled open another box, retrieving his smartwatch, a pair of polished shoes, and a stack of tech cords. "He packed our stuff," he muttered, voice cracking. Mira yanked a no card from the top of the pile. Her hands trembled as she read it. Her expression shifted, shock bleeding into fury. "You don't live here anymore," she read aloud, her voice rising. "Your things are behind the house. Clear the yard by tomorrow." She tore the card in half, the pieces fluttering to the wet grass. "That bastard." Jace turned back toward the door, his fists pounding on it, the sound dull but furious. "You think this is funny, Dad? Throwing us out like garbage? You're heartless." His voice fractured under its own weight. Mira joined him, her knock sharp, deliberate. "Raymond, open this door. Right now. You can't do this to us." I stepped back from the window, letting the curtain fall. Their voices faded to a muffled storm, raging against a door that would not open. My chest felt tight, but not with guilt. This was justice. They'd taken my trust, my money, my home, and worn it like armor. Now, stripped of it, all they had left was anger in their hands and rain soaking their suitcases. The phone buzzed from the coffee table. Jace's name lit the screen. Then again. Voicemails stacking like apologies. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The keys in my pocket weighed heavier now, anchoring me in place. I turned away. The banging grew quieter behind me. The phone glowed once more, then dimmed, the screen darkening like a dying star. The kitchen was dim, the single bulb above the sink casting a pale light. The kettle was still warm. The air smelled of chamomile, edged with the scent of rain drifting through the walls. I crossed to the window again, pulling the curtain just wide enough to see the yard. Jace and Mira hadn't moved far. The boxes were collapsing under the drizzle, cardboard wilting, contents slouching under the weight. Their suitcases sagged beside them. Jace stood still, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. Mira paced, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice cutting through the rain, too quiet to hear, but sharp in tone. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. I picked it up and hit play. Jace's voice cracked through the speaker, tired and raw. "Dad, come on. This is insane. You can't just lock us out. Where are we even supposed to go?" A pause. A breath. "I'm sorry, okay? Just open the door. Let's talk." Then Myra's voice followed in the next message. She was forcing the words out like they tasted wrong in her mouth. "Raymond, we messed up. I know that. Can you just let us in? Please. We can work this out." Her voice faltered, that perfect edge breaking, but it didn't sway me. I'd heard these voices before, just long enough to get what they wanted. Then gone. I set the phone down again, its screen flickering in reflection against the window pane. They were still outside. Jace had dragged one suitcase to the curb. Mira gestured wildly, still on the call. Probably cycling through options, hotels, favors, people they'd never had time for until now. I pictured them in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Stonegrove. One of those places with flickering neon signs and carpets that reeked of mildew. I imagined Jace slumped on the bed, face in his hands. Mira pacing, heels tapping across cheap linoleum. "You told me he wouldn't do this," she'd say, trying to keep her voice low enough so no one next door could hear. "You said he was too weak to stand up to us." Jace would snap. "I didn't think he'd go this far. He's never done anything like this before." "You should have known," she'd fire back. "That stunt at the airport, your idea. Leave him behind, you said. He'll get over it. And now look at us." "Don't turn this on me," Jace would growl, standing to face her. "You're the one who kept pushing, complaining about the house, the money. You wanted this as much as I did." Myra's expression would go icy. Her voice would drop. "We're not finished. We go back tomorrow. If we have to beg, we beg. He's got to crack eventually." I blinked, pulling myself out of the thought like it was a dream I'd walked too far into. The vision was so clear I could almost smell the stale air of that motel room. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. Their messages, their desperation, it was proof of the truth. They had built their entire lives on my back. And now that the ground had shifted, they had nowhere left to stand. I felt no pity, just calm, the kind that comes after a long storm. I poured a fresh cup of tea. Steam curled above the rim, soft and fragrant. I sat at the kitchen table. The wood creaked beneath my elbows, worn but strong. My eyes landed on a small note card tucked beneath the mail pile. Elaine's handwriting looping neat. Coffee tomorrow. My treat. M. I smiled. The tension in my chest released, little by little. She'd been there for all of this. A clear voice in the noise. A steady hand. Tomorrow, I'd tell her everything. Let her share the silence of this victory. The rain tapped softly against the window, a gentle rhythm that filled the silence. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading through my chest, and let the note card from Marnie rest between my fingers. Outside, the yard was empty. Their suitcases were gone. The boxes? Nothing but a collapsed heap of damp cardboard. They'd lost. And I was still here. The cafe was a quiet haven. The air was thick with the scent of roasted beans and fresh pastries. Sunlight poured through wide windows, catching the edges of polished wood tables and the gleam of silver espresso machines. I sat across from Marnie, hands curled around a ceramic mug. The warmth seeped into my palms. She leaned forward, her gray curls bouncing slightly as she stirred her latte. Her eyes, always sharp, glinted with curiosity. So, she said, how's it feel? Being king of your castle again. I chuckled, lighter than I expected. It feels right. Quiet, but right. She grinned and tapped her spoon against the mug. Damn straight. You showed them. Not everyone would have had the spine. I took another sip. The coffee was bold and bitter, grounding. Around us, life hummed, murmured conversations, the tapping of laptop keys, the call of orders from the counter. It felt normal, like the world had gone on spinning even after everything I'd fought through. They called again last night, I said, setting the mug down. Jace and Mira. Left messages, begging to come back. Said they were sorry. Said they'd change. Marnie raised a brow, her lips pursing. And you believe them? I shook my head. A small smile pulled at my mouth. Not a word. It's the same old tune. Say just enough to slip back in, then repeat the cycle. Good, she said firmly. You protected yourself. That's what counts. They made their bed. Let them lie in it. I nodded. Her words felt like stones settling into place. I thought of Jace's last message. His voice low, almost broken. Dad, please. Just give us one more chance. I'd listened to it once, then deleted it. A single action that felt as final as changing the locks. Myra's voice had been smoother, rehearsed, but hollow. She wasn't sorry. She was inconvenienced. That realization, that clarity, freed something inside me. Like I'd finally dropped a weight I'd carried too long. We talked a while longer. Marnie described her plans to plant roses this spring, her enthusiasm infectious. You should come help, she said, eyes twinkling. Get your hands dirty. It's good for the soul. Maybe I will, I said. And I meant it. For the first time in years, I had space to choose what came next. Back home, the kitchen was warm, filled with the scent of apples, cinnamon, and something softer I hadn't felt in ages, comfort. I decided to bake. A pie, just like I used to. The dough rolled smooth beneath my hands. The apples were sliced and spiced, their juice clinging to my fingers. I worked slowly, deliberately, letting the rhythm center me. I remembered baking for Jace when he was little, his eyes wide, sneaking bits of filling from the bowl. That memory didn't sting anymore. It was just a fact. A part of a life I no longer lived in. The front door creaked open. Marnie stepped inside, holding a small bouquet of daisies. For the garden, she said, setting them in a vase. Thought they'd brighten the place. They do, I said, sliding the pie into the oven. The kitchen glowed in the afternoon light. Sun poured through the open door, catching the petals in a golden haze. Marnie sat at the table, her presence as familiar now as the kettle's whistle. We should have dinner soon, she said. You, me, maybe a few neighbors. Break in this new chapter. I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel. I'd like that. She leaned back, fingers trailing the edge of the vase. You're going to be okay, Raymond. More than okay. I nodded. The words settled in me, deeper than I expected. The oven hummed quietly. The pie baked, its scent filling the room with warmth. Somewhere out there, Jace and Mira were scrambling to rebuild. I didn't hate them. I didn't wish them harm. I just wanted peace and distance. This house, this life, was mine again. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was home. The sunlight shifted. The kitchen bathed in soft gold. I stood at the counter, daisies bright against the wood, and let the moment hold me. Whatever came next, I was ready. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments. Subscribe to keep this conversation going.